Buckle up. Time for another episode of The Morning After. Episode 15. We've made it through the NFL regular season. I am your host, Jared Smith. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me again. If you're listening to this on a Monday morning, man, did we have a wild week. I feel like, anytime we go through a new year, this is always one of my busiest times of the year. And the new year itself is just like a whirlwind because you're dealing with college football, NFL regular seasons wrapping up. And then, of course, just trying to have some semblance of a life around the holidays, around New Year's. It's just I don't even know what day it is anymore. I do know, actually, that I am recording this on a Sunday night right after game 272 of the NFL regular season. It's wild that football season's pretty much over. We have 3 games left in college. We'll have 6 wild card games this week, then 4 divisional games next week, 2 championship games, and then the Super Bowl. So we are down to 16 meaningful football games left before the great spring and summer break. I'm looking forward to that, but we still have a lot of work left to do. So on today's show, first I'll start with the itinerary for today's show, and then I'll let you know a couple of announcements I have coming up for next week. So we'll talk, obviously, Week 18 recap. I won't do the typical upgrades, downgrades, because, we're not really in that season mode anymore. I'll get to a few storylines that I thought were intriguing, and then we'll get to some news and notes as we spin things forward to the playoffs. This show will be mainly focused on setting the stage for Wild Card Weekend in terms of my NFL opinions. Also, we'll have some college football playoff reactions from what we saw in the quarterfinal round on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. I won't have full deep dives for the semifinals just yet. More on that in a minute. We'll also have a morning glory for you. We'll have an actionable element, something you can bet now. No games on Monday. Although, actually, no, I take that back. There is one game on Monday. So maybe I'll give you something for the FCS championship game for morning glory. But there's also a CFP future that I want to give you as well. That I think is something that you should be betting. So maybe we'll have a bonus morning glory. We'll give you something actionable for Monday night with the college football FCS championship taking place between Montana State and Indiana State. And then we'll give you something for the college football playoff as well. And I'll do a rise and wine as well. I've got something in my back pocket that's NFL related that I need to vent about. And it has to do with one of my hometown teams. But now the announcement. I'm going to be doing live shows next week, and I'm very excited to be doing 2 live shows next week. I'm going to do them on Tuesday and Wednesday morning, my time, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. It'll be slightly in the afternoon Eastern time. I might push the time back a little bit depending on how much prep I need to get done beforehand, but it'll be right around that 9 to 10 a.m. window. So let's call it 9:30 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesday and Wednesday. I will be doing individual previews for the Fiesta Bowl and the Peach Bowl. It looks like the Fiesta Bowl will be Thursday. So I will be doing that preview on Tuesday. And then the Peach Bowl, Oregon and Indiana, is Friday. So I'll be doing that preview on Wednesday. Does that make sense? Right? I'll give you basically 48 hours from when I drop the preview to when kickoff of the game is. And it'll be live. I invite you in to watch, ask questions. What I plan on doing is watching film. I'll probably pull maybe a whole game or at least a side of each ball, a side of the ball for each team. And we'll just go through and watch. And I'll have some kind of notes. I'll have some kind of theme that I want to talk about. But I love just watching the games from prior, in the regular season. Maybe for Oregon, Indiana, right? We'll watch the Oregon-Indiana game. I think that makes sense, right, from earlier this year. So we'll have some actual game film from the matchup itself, which is cool. And then for the Fiesta Bowl with Ole Miss and Miami, I'm probably just going to watch film from the quarterfinals, especially Ole Miss. I think we got to watch some of the Ole Miss film. Their win over Georgia. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss was unbelievable. So that's the plan. It'll be live. It'll be off the cuff. It's not like, tune in for my best bets. It's just to gain some knowledge about the teams. And then I will have picks for the game probably after that. I might drop the picks in the video. And I'll probably do a newsletter for each video. So if you haven't signed up for the newsletter yet, do so now. I'll have breakdowns and recaps of the live shows in the newsletter next week. These are actual morning after episodes, right? This is episode 15. Next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, will be episode 16, episode 17. And you're going to start to notice that more and more as we get through the NFL football season and now into the postseason. I'm going to start doing more midweek shows and random time shows, live shows, just to get more content out there, and it won't be as structured. It'll be a little more free-flowing, a little more Q&A, a little more film watching, a lot of film watching, especially when we get closer to draft time in February and March, and then March Madness will obviously be a big part of the equation once we get into that, I would say, mid to late February time when college basketball really starts to percolate. And then in March, I'll be doing a ton of shows. I don't know the cadence and the schedule yet. I'll worry about that in March. Let's get through February 1st and the rest of January. But you'll start to notice the timing of the shows will differ now that the regular season's over and we're kind of going into a bit of a different schedule. So that's the housekeeping. I hope you've enjoyed this little sprint through the NFL season, right? We started this podcast, I want to say like week 6 or 7-ish of the NFL season. So, we've been doing this now for about 3 months. And, episode 15, basically one episode a week. I had 1 week where I did a bonus episode for the NFL free agency trade deadline situation. And I might do more interview shows in the future as well. But I like hosting by myself, honestly. I do like solo hosting. I like just getting my thoughts out there. It helps me organize my thoughts, especially writing scripts. As I'm seeing things happening, I'm jotting down notes, I'm structuring segments and ideas. Like this to me has been something that's helped me really crystallize my platform, and I hope you've enjoyed the content. I'm not trying to be too hot-takey. I'm not trying to be too know-it-all-y. I'm just trying to be me, and I'm just trying to share with you my thoughts and try to help you learn anything that you maybe want to learn. That's why I encourage you to hop in, ask questions, especially when I do the live shows coming up soon. All right, that's enough housekeeping. That's enough jibber-jabber. Let's get into what we saw this week. Week 18 was nuts. So I have the numbers here from the final favorites and overs this year. So obviously the Steelers win and as a dog, as a home dog on Sunday night. So a late underdog winner there. And underdogs were profitable this year, kind of. Right at the break-even mark, essentially. Underdogs were 141, 129, and 2 ATS. So it's basically 52 and a little bit higher percent. About 52.2% ATS. You're not rich, but you might have broke even if you laid 10 cents on each one. Or if you had some ones where you maybe, got even odds or better than minus 110 price. So if you bet minus 110 on each one, you pretty much broke even if you bet every underdog this year. But if you got some favorable odds, maybe you shop at an exchange, you only lay 5 cents vig, you maybe did a little bit better. Overs end up going 141, 130, and 1, so right around 52%, basically break even, slightly down for the year. So neither overs nor favorites or underdogs or unders, really. Either side of the coin was really profitable this year. You were pretty much down vig. And that's pretty much par for the course. Favorites were hot early, cold late. Unders were hot early, and then overs were a little bit, more trendier down the stretch. So that's the NFL season in a nutshell. Very coin-flippy. Not a whole lot of direction to the season. And the playoffs are going to be nuts. I think there's 4 home underdogs in the playoffs this week. Pittsburgh, New England, Jacksonville, and Carolina. And we'll see where Green Bay, Chicago closes. Right now it's a pick 'em. Could go either way. I could see some Green Bay money coming in, especially if Jordan Love gets upgraded and maybe the Packers get some good injury news this week. So you have basically 4 home underdogs and a pick 'em out of the 6 games this week. The only home favorites, Philly and New England. Weird stuff. The final game of the year was wacky. The Pittsburgh Steelers did not deserve to win that game. Their defense was terrible. they let Baltimore march it up and down the field, especially in the fourth quarter. They were minus 2.2 net yards per play. Baltimore gained 7.5 yards per play in that one, but missed field goal. Random Plinko stuff late, right? You had Boswell miss an extra point for the first time in like a gajillion years. And then Tyler Loop, the Ravens kicker. Tough year for Ravens kickers, man. Obviously the Justin Tucker stuff in the offseason, and then this poor kid Loop, who's probably going to get run out of town, unfortunately. But the script writers don't miss. Tyler Loop might be missing, and Chris Boswell might be missing field goals, but the NFL script writers certainly do not miss. That was an awesome game. Back and forth. The underdog prevails again. It just always seems like if you bet the underdog in a Steelers-Ravens game, you're going to come out on top. That was my one of my winners of the week. I actually had a pretty profitable week betting Week 18. I didn't bet any contract incentive props. That has completely been washed away. The contract incentive props, I remember betting them back in 2020. That was when Gronk was yelling at Tom, I need one more catch for $1 million, baby. And that was really before gambling content was really popular. I mean, there were a few people, some OGs that were doing it at that time, but that was right when the wave was starting to happen. And I remember putting out a memo, I remember I screenshotted like my Apple Notes at the time. I was working for Sports Grid at the time, but I wasn't really doing content on my own. Twitter was like, I didn't have I didn't have a huge following back then. I was trying, but I was definitely in a different mindset than I was doing it now. But I came up with this idea. I was like, wait a minute. These guys need these certain props or these guys need these certain milestones to get money. Like, don't you think that maybe the market's not fully accounting for that? And at the time, I don't think it was, because the information just wasn't out there as much. And I remember the big claim to fame that I had, like the big hit that put this strategy on the map for me, was Tyler Lockett. He needed 2 touchdowns to reach a certain milestone, and his 2 touchdown prop that day was 16-1. And I remember I blasted it out. Tyler Lockett needs 2 touchdowns, 16-1. He scored 2 touchdowns in the first half, both red zone trips. He was playing for Seattle at the time. It was Russell Wilson was the quarterback. Both red zone trips, first 2 red zone trips, he got both looks, and he caught both of them, and he scored 2 touchdowns, and I made a boatload of money that day. And then now everyone's talking about, like, you cannot look, and people are talking about it even before Week 18. I saw contract incentive, articles popping up in Week 15, Week 16, Week 17. So the information is so out there, and that's not to say that there isn't value in the prop market in Week 18. But if the information is out there and everyone knows that this person needs this, there's no value in it. And if anything, because everyone's betting one side, the overs typically, the number will move up so much that there's actually value on the under. I'd be willing to bet that if you faded every contract incentive, narrative that was put out there this week, you waited until Sunday right before kick, and then you bet the under on everybody, I bet you came out well on top. So the lesson is you just have to use discernment. You have to compare it to what their odds were earlier in the year. If a guy goes from a 50-yard reception line to 80 yards all of a sudden because he needs some contract incentive, where do you think the value lies? You just have to not be attached to one strategy. Just because something worked in 2020 doesn't mean it's going to work in 2026. You have to be willing to bend. You have to be like water, like Bruce Lee said. So, unfortunately, the jig is up with the contract incentive props. It was a fun run. Same thing with NFL draft props. It's just really hard to make money on them now because the books make it a lot more difficult. They put the lines up a lot later. They make the limits a lot shorter. They're not putting as many markets up as they were before. Sports books adjust. You hammer them with something, they adjust. You have to counter. It's moves and counter moves. And right now, the vibe in the contract incentive markets is wait until Sunday, everything's going to bet over, and then come back under. Another thing, too, is not every game really warrants it. Like high leverage games, like that Steelers-Ravens game, like the Niners-Seahawks game, the Panthers-Bucks game, those are championship type game, playoff games. No one cares about your contract incentive prop in a playoff game. And another thing to consider is the owner. Is he a frugal owner? Does he play for the Bengals? Does he play for the Raiders or the Jets or one of those teams that doesn't really have a strong organizational structure? Maybe the owner and the GM doesn't want to pay that contract incentive. And here's another option, and I've heard this from some agents and some former players, if the player comes close and the organization likes the player, they might have a side deal in place that says, we're going to give you the contract incentive anyways. Hey, you came close to this milestone. We're going to give you a $500,000 roster bonus starting in April because of your great work this year. So, and that's the case, then the player doesn't care as much about reaching the incentive. So there's a lot of factors with these. It's not cut and dry. Like, this player needs X, so we need to bet this. Like, I was kind of being sarcastic on social media the other day, and I was like, oh, well, Sam Darnold will get a bonus if the Seahawks win the Super Bowl, so we should bet Seattle, right? Because if they get the 1 seed, it's easier to win the Super Bowl. Like, I was tweeting that tongue-in-cheek. I did the same thing with Aaron Rodgers, because the point is, it's not as easy as, oh, well, this is something that the player needs to make money, so it's automatically going to happen. You need to use your checklist and use your handicapping skills, and just use some logic. Right? The herd's going one way. Odds are the market's going to be oversaturated. So, contract incentive props, rest in peace. If you did play them this week, God bless, but I did none of the sort. Not a bad week for me gambling, though. I thought it was actually, there were some spots that were kind of like obvious this week. I thought the Houston spot was kind of obvious, right? Once Jacksonville took their inevitable lead against the shitty Titans, you figured Houston would pull their starters. They did. Colts were a double-digit dog. You figured Rivers and Leonard, the market was kind of cooling on Rivers, and then they put Leonard in, and Leonard has significantly more physical abilities than Phillip Rivers, and I thought that if the market downgraded from Rivers to Leonard, there's value on the Colts, because Leonard played okay. Colts might have something there with him, actually. He played well. He ran it well. I mean, that's a good Texans defense. He played against the starters in the first half, played pretty well. So I thought that Colts spot was pretty obvious. I thought the Jets fade spot was obvious. I did a mega teaser with all the teams that needed to win, right? The Patriots and the Broncos, and the Jaguars and the Texans, like all those teams that were like playing for something to start, that were big double-digit favorites. I teased that down in a big, like, 13-point mega teaser. That ended up hitting. But I thought it was a relatively, other than the last game, which was very wildly unpredictable, I thought it was a relatively vanilla week. Like, honestly, I mean, almost half the teams in the NFL this week started backup or third-string quarterbacks. It was really a strange Week 18. The early windows were just complete snooze fests. I mean, they were just absolute duds of games. You had third stringers all over the field. It looked like a preseason week more than a regular season week. I mean, the level of play was alarmingly poor. And I think the NFL has kind of made their bed, and now they have to sleep in it, right? This long 18-week season with one bye, the way that they've spaced out the windows, it just, every Saturday to Thursday to Sunday, they're playing Wednesday, Christmas Day. Like, it's just like the season has become a complete cluster. And what you're going to see is when teams reach the end, think of it like you're running a race. Like, I run a lot. So I do a lot of 4, 5, 6 mile runs all the time. First couple miles, you're feeling good, and then you get to that last mile and you're just trying to finish, man. Like, your form starts to break down. You're out of breath. Your legs are sore. Your calves are sore. Your feet are sore. Like, I did a 7-mile run the other day. By that last mile, man, like, I just wanted to finish. I didn't care if I was keeping my breath. I try to focus on my breath and my cadence and my stride. But that last half mile, when I'm like sprinting and just trying to get through it and just trying to finish, it just breaks down. The quality of it breaks down. And I think the longer you make the season, the more Week 18 is going to be a cluster where teams are just like completely gassed. They have absolutely nothing left. And it's such a physical sport. There were a lot of games that really missed the mark this week. And I was shocked. Why was the Bucs-Panthers game not played in the same window as the Saints-Falcons? I know it gave the NFL an extra playoff game, and I'm sure it was for entertainment reasons. But you really sucked the air out of that Bucs-Panthers game by not having the Saints-Falcons result happen simultaneously. Like, the NFL always does that, where they group those games together that decide the division. And I thought that was strange. I really did. And it was pouring rain in Tampa on Saturday. Like, the weather gods clearly didn't want that game on a Saturday. Like, that game should have been played on Sunday in the same window as Atlanta and New Orleans. I don't know what game you put in that Saturday afternoon spot. Frankly, I think it's obscene that we're doing all these Saturday games the last week of the regular season. I think every game in Week 18 should be played on Sunday. You can separate the windows into afternoon and early afternoon and late afternoon, but we shouldn't have these standalone games on Saturday night and Saturday afternoon before Week 18. There's something like, and I know they've been doing it for the last few years. It's since they expanded to the 18-game schedule, they put these games on Saturday. I just think you're doing these teams a disservice, right? You're giving them one less day of prep at the end of the year, and you're separating these windows to where you're making it almost advantageous for one team or the other based off of they know who wins before the game starts. Like, it's just, I think the NFL has really gotten gluttonous with dominating certain time windows. And the reason that they do it is because they can get away with it. No one's going to stop them. It's like they're like the evil villain. It's like they're Dr. Evil. Like, $1 billion. Like, they're going to take over the world because they can. You're going to watch no matter when they put the games. But I think they're diluting their product slowly. Slowly over time, you're seeing the quality of product decrease. For example, when you were watching the third-string quarterbacks in the games today, how greasy were those drives and were the executions of those drives? When you watch the second and third-string quarterbacks run offense, it really makes you appreciate the top-tier guys, the Mahomes, the Rodgers in his prime and Peyton Manning, Tom Brady in their prime, when they're just running everything and they just are they make it look so effortless and the things that they're able to do. And then you watch a guy like Clayton Tune and Chris Oladokun and Aiden O'Connell and it's just like it's like a junior varsity game. Like, it's wild how they're all professional quarterbacks, but the drop-off in quality between the first stringers and the second and third stringers at that position, at the quarterback position, it really makes you appreciate the top-tier guys. The Josh Allens, the Drake Mays right now coming onto the scene, the Justin Herberts, those guys. Like, it really makes you appreciate them because the level of quarterback play outside of, let's say, the top 10, 15 guys, the gap is massive. And there's just not a lot of talent at that position right now. And I understand why the NFL wants to protect these guys. That's why all the rules are in place to protect the quarterbacks. I mean, you see how bad the quarterback play is at the lower tier of the roster. I mean, it's a wide gap. So, weird Week 18. I think we're going to see some more coach firings, right? We saw Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot, both GM and head coach in Atlanta, get fired on Sunday night. Terry Fontenot fired himself after giving Kirk Cousins $100 million and then drafting Michael Penix, a month later in 2024. So the writing was on the wall then. I mean, I remember that video that went viral of him talking to the owner, Arthur Blank, after they drafted Penix. And Arthur Blank looked like an old man at the deli that ordered matzo ball soup when he really wanted the split pea. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Why'd you go? We just gave $100 million to his Cousins guy. He drafted a quarterback. So that situation is now cleansed. I don't know who will be the new head coach in Atlanta, but my guess is Raheem Morris is going to go be a DC somewhere and be really damn good. Probably go back to the Rams if Chris Shula takes a job. But so Atlanta's situation's changing. I think John Harbaugh might get fired, Ravens head coach. I kind of see him as on the Andy Reid path. And I know Andy Reid made it to multiple Super Bowls with the Eagles. And to be fair, John Harbaugh's won 2 Super Bowls where Andy did not win Super Bowls with the Eagles. But I think Harbaugh's got a lot of fire left in him. And if the Ravens do move on, I can see his next stop, if it's the right situation, being very successful. I think if he does get fired, I think he'll be a head coach again. I could see the Giants being interested. I can see the Falcons being interested. So I think John Harbaugh, I wouldn't be shocked based off of some of the rhetoric we've heard in Baltimore down the stretch if he'll get the axe. But Black Monday, I'm sure there will be other coaches fired. And I hope one of them particularly for my hometown team is on the list, and we'll get to him later in the show. I don't know what to say about the Jets, but that late stretch run was embarrassing. I guess they improved their draft stock. The Raiders will pick first. Jets will pick second. I'm assuming Mendoza will be the first pick. The Jets probably will take a quarterback, but who knows? A lot of hustle and bustle and grease and grime of the draft process still to play out. So that's the NFL Week 18 in a nutshell. I finished the year with the Seahawks as my number one team in my power ratings. No surprise there after their impressive win over the Niners on Saturday night. My power ratings to close the season, Seattle, 10 points better than an average team. Rams, 9 points better than an average team. So if the Rams and the Seahawks played on a neutral tomorrow, I'd make Seattle a 1-point favorite. Houston, Philly, New England, 7 points better than an average team. So that's my top 5 right there. Seattle, Rams, Texans, Seahawks, Rams, Texans, Eagles, Patriots. That's the top 5 of my power ratings. Niners and Bills, 6 points better than an average team. Both of those teams are flawed on defense. Jaguars, 5 points better than an average team. Obviously, Jacksonville just unproven in the postseason, but they look really good down the stretch. Chargers, Broncos, both even, 4 points better than an average team, even though Denver is the 1 seed in the AFC. I have them 10th, tied for 9th in my ratings. And that's just because I don't trust Bo Nix. And I think there's a little bit of fugaziness with that overall Broncos team. I have actually the Lions also tied for 9th, 4 points better than an average team, and they are not in the playoffs. Ravens also 3 points better than an average team, not in the playoffs. Bears, 3 points better than an average team. Packers, 2 points better than an average team, but they've lost 4 straight heading into the playoffs, and that doesn't happen often. And when it does happen, you typically lose your wild card game. And then the Steelers, 1 point better than an average team. They are the 4 seed in the AFC. And in my lowest rated team that made the playoffs, the Carolina Panthers, no surprise there, 3 points worse than an average team. I've got Carolina a -3 in the postseason. I've got them tied with Dallas and Cincinnati in my ratings. So if Dallas and Cincinnati played Carolina on a neutral tomorrow, I'd make that game a pick'em, but only one of those 3 teams is in the playoffs. So those are my power ratings. I finished the year with the Jets as my worst team, 14 points worse than an average team. Now, I don't discriminate with heads or tails. I don't have a cap on how high you can go or how low you can go. I will keep downgrading you until you cover, until the market says otherwise. And the Jets, the bottom fell out. At one point, I had the Jets to start the season a -3, and they ended the year a -14. So I dropped the Jets 11 points in my power ratings throughout the course of the season. The Titans, I dropped them from a -3 to a -11, so they are the second worst team in my ratings. Raiders, Chiefs, Cardinals. Obviously, the Raiders were not expected to be great heading into the year. Cardinals, though, were. Cardinals were one of the biggest underachievers of the year. Their win total was 8.5. My dumbass bet the over. They ended up with 3 wins. Awful year for Jonathan Gannon and that Cardinals team. Obviously, the Chiefs, with the Mahomes injury, really derailed their season. So you really can't compare their rating from week 1 to now. But I had them +6 entering the year, and I finished them at -9. So Mahomes being worth more than a touchdown probably, being a big reason for the drop. But disappointing year for Kansas City, and we'll see how things look for them in the offseason. All right, let's briefly go through the wildcard games. Obviously, we don't have as many games to go through, so this won't take as long. And frankly, I don't see a ton of value early. Actually, the numbers are pretty much aligned with my numbers, which is good. That means that my ratings are. I think I did a good job, kind of gauging where teams are, and throttling up, throttling down accordingly. Rams. So the Saturday games are Rams at Panthers and Packers at Bears. Those are the 2 games on Saturday. So 2 NFC games will start the playoffs on Saturday night. Rams at Panthers. I make the line 10.5. Rams, obviously a road favorite. Line's 10. So I don't see a ton of value there. I think the Rams obviously win. This is a revenge game from week 13. The Rams were upset in that game. The line was also 10 in that game too. So about a month later, nothing's really changed. Total's 46.5. The total was 45 in that first matchup. So total's gone up a tick. Spread's the same. Rams obviously lost the game, so didn't cover as a road favorite. Green Bay at Chicago. This is where I see some value here. In fact, the market's already starting to move in this way. So I probably would bet this now. In fact, I am going to bet this now. I'm going to do it live on the air. How about that? Because I don't want this thing to flip, and I'm already seeing some numbers flip. So excuse me while I fire up my app here and see what this bet is. Yeah, we're definitely going to bet this right now. So I'm going to take 1.5 with – so I see a plus 1.5 out there for the Bears. It's minus 118. You can bet the money line at minus 104. That's fine too. I'm just going to take the 1.5 because I'm only putting 1 unit on this to start out. Maybe I'll add to it later, but I'm gonna bet the Bears plus 1.5. I make this game Chicago minus 2.5. I have Chicago rated higher than Green Bay. The market has not liked Chicago this year. We've talked about this on the show. They're winning games by the skin of their teeth. They lost today. I don't know if you downgrade them today or not. You probably should because they were a favorite in that game and they lost to Detroit even though they played all their starters and they kind of needed the game. They didn't end up needing the game because Philly lost, but they didn't know that because those games are played at the same time. But the market has hated Chicago all year. But they are winning games, man. Like, I think I understand why the market hasn't liked them. They're not checking the boxes. Their formula is a little bit soft in terms of how they win games. But I do think there's something to be said in the NFL about winning games. And Ben Johnson's bunch has done a good job of that this year. But here's really the reason why I'm betting Chicago. Green Bay has lost 4 straight games heading into the playoffs. That has happened one other time in the last 25 years. It was last year. The Steelers lost 4 straight heading into the playoffs, and then they got blown out in the wild card round by the Ravens. I just don't think entering the playoffs on a 4-game losing streak is a recipe for just magically waking up and turning it around. Jordan Love hasn't played in 3 weeks. I just don't like Green Bay at all. I think they pissed their season away with lackluster performances in games they should have won against Cleveland, against Carolina, against Dallas. And then down the stretch, they completely fell apart. And I just don't think teams like that can magically wake up for the playoffs. I think it's really hard to turn that ship around when it is so far down the negative rabbit hole. And I think this Chicago team, again, the market hasn't liked them this year, but they've won games. And they don't even have to win this game for me to win this bet. I mean, they could lose by a point. I could still win this bet. Now, odds are that won't happen. But I think Chicago's a little bit undervalued. I think their ability to win close games and their lack of fear being behind makes them very dangerous in the playoffs. And we have to fade Green Bay. Losing 4 straight games heading into the postseason is just a recipe for disaster. So Chicago, plus 1.5. My first playoff wager for the wild card round. Book it. Buffalo, let's go to the Sunday games. Buffalo, Jacksonville. We'll start things off Sunday afternoon or morning here in Vegas. I make the game Jacksonville minus 0.5. I basically rate these teams the same. I have Buffalo 1 point ahead of Jacksonville in the ratings, but obviously you give Jacksonville at least a point for being at home. So I make this game a pick'em. The number is Buffalo minus 1, so it's right on that. I probably won't do much with this game, but the over feels like the right side. It's at 51.5. It opened there. I didn't see any initial movement up. 51, of course, is a key total in the NFL, one of the most landed on totals. So my guess is if it goes down at all, I would be shocked if it went below 51. If it does, we're betting the over. Even if it goes down to 51, I still might get to the over here. Maybe a first half over. Neither defense has played overly well this year. Buffalo's defense has been really bad. Jacksonville's defense has been okay, better in the second half, but both offenses have been really good. Obviously, the Jags offense has been one of the best in the league over the last month. And Buffalo, it's Josh Allen. So I feel like I'm going to at least get 24 out of him. And if it's 51.5, well, 24 all, tough to lose that. So That feels like the move for me is I will take the over between the Bills and the Jags, but I'm not in a rush to bet that. I'll probably wait until we see some movement this week. We'll see what the market does. Philly hosting San Francisco. I make this line 2.5. We're out to 3.5 now on Philly. I like Philly in the game. I think what I noticed San Francisco, Seattle, when the Niners managed up to a legit defense, right? They were blowing out Arizona and Carolina and all these bad defenses down the stretch. Then they play Seattle, and then it's like, whoa, you just can't move the ball. I mean, they got bogged down in that game against the Seahawks. 4.1 yards per play, 36% success rate. So Philly's defense, legit, right? I put Philly's defense maybe not on the same level as Seattle, but right there. And I think San Francisco's offense kind of showed me that they're good, not great this year. And when they manage up against good defenses, they kind of take a step back with their efficiency. Trent Williams is hurt. The Niners are just a mash unit. They're on the road. They're outdoors in a tough environment. I don't see them going into Philly and getting a win. But now that we're out to 4, I'm seeing some 4s pop up in the market. 3.5s being, the prevailing number. Not as bullish on that spread because I make it 2.5. Maybe you upgrade Philly a half a point onto the key because I think the defense matters. Doesn't get me to 3.5. Doesn't get me to 4. So not a great bet. But I do think Philly's the right side. And I think Philly is, if I had to make a pick for the NFC right now, I think Philly would be my team. I know that sounds crazy based on what we've seen, but I think the Eagles haven't shown us their best this year, where I think we've seen the best from the LA Rams. We've seen the best from the Seahawks. We've seen the best from the Niners. I don't think the Bears have that extra gear to get up to that elite level. I think they're just right on the cusp, still a year away. So the NFC, if we don't trust Sam Darnold, and I'm not fully sold on the Rams, maybe the Eagles just take that defense up a notch. Jalen Hurts kind of guts his way through a couple of tough games, and Philly, pieces together a couple of good performances and gets back to an NFC Championship game, and then all bets are off. So I'm kind of leaning Eagles here as my team in the NFC, but I don't have to worry about that yet. Maybe to have some fun, maybe we'll do a Moneyline rollover with the Eagles in the playoffs. Maybe I'll take $100, start it out with Eagles Moneyline against the Niners, roll it over to the next week, and then we'll see where we're at come NFC Championship Sunday. We'll see. Not confirmed there. But the one bet I did make, absolutely betting Bears plus 1.5. That's the NFC bet to make. The other AFC games, the Sunday night game, Chargers at Patriots. I make this 4.5. It's 3.5. I see a 4 out there. I feel like that's priced right. I would lean Chargers, but I make something 4.5. Why am I going to take 3.5? It's not a bet I'm going to make. But I do think New England is a little bit overpriced based on their schedule and based on who they played this year. And if you give me a healthy Herbert, and I don't know if he's healthy. He got a week off. That'll help. But this dude was really banged up, and that offensive line is bad. So that's the one thing that scares me about the Chargers. But I don't want to back Drake May as a favorite in the playoffs. I'm not ready for that yet. I do think we're going to see a May dud in the postseason, and I don't think New England's going to be the team in the AFC. I've been itching to fade them in the playoffs, but I don't know if this is the round. I don't know if 3.5 is enough. I need a little bit more with the Chargers. Maybe it'll be in the AFC divisional round that we end up fading New England. And then the game we just settled with Pittsburgh winning. They are hosting Houston in the wild card game Monday night. I make this Houston minus 4.5. It's 3. Probably would lean Houston. I feel like Pittsburgh kind of emptied the tank. They do get Metcalf back, but that Texans defense is legit. And they're going to make Rodgers struggle. And they're going to make him, work for his supper, sing for his supper that night. So I would lean Houston if you can find a flat 3. Who knows? Maybe Aaron Rodgers will get some home dog love. Maybe we'll see a 2.5. Doubtful, but I make Houston a 4.5-point favorite. So, yeah, I think I would lay 3 with Houston. Not 3.5, but I would probably lay 3 with Houston. But my only official early wild card wager, Bears plus 1.5 against the Packers. A home underdog Chicago Bears team against the Green Bay Packers. I don't think they will close an underdog. I think Chicago will close a favorite, a 1-point favorite. I make them a 2.5-point favorite. I think it is disgraceful and very disrespectful that the division champs, Chicago Bears, are not favored against another divisional team in a playoff game. It's wild to me how much disrespect the Bears are getting in the market. I'll bank on my ratings this week and say Chicago should be favored in this game. And I think they'll go off a favorite. All right, there's your wild card preview. Let's move on to the college football playoff reactions from the quarterfinal round. Alabama, Indiana, belt to ass. The Hoosiers are the real deal, people. I think Indiana is a juggernaut. I mean, that was, and it's not like Alabama played a great game. I'm not going to say that Indiana was so dominant over an Alabama team that played great. Alabama made a ton of mistakes. They couldn't run the ball. They were very one-dimensional. It was kind of all of the issues they were having up until, they were great in October, terrible in November, and then they skated by Oklahoma after falling behind. But all of the issues that they were having in November that kind of caused their troubles, they all manifested at the same time against a really good opponent. They flubbed a special teams play on a fake punt. They didn't make any plays. Ty Simpson wasn't making plays, and Fernando Mendoza was. And that's why he won the Heisman. And that's why Indiana is favored right now by a pretty wide margin to be the national champion. They are a worthy favorite. They look to be a bully right now. Never thought I'd see the day with Indiana, but Kurt Cignetti, that's the coaching job of the millennium right there. And I definitely tip my cap to the Indiana Hoosiers, who I'm going to be talking about later during our actionable Morning Glory segment. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Texas Tech, Oregon. If anyone else with a pulse is playing quarterback for Texas Tech, I think the Red Raiders have a chance to win that game. Baron Morton was awful. He looked completely overmatched. That was the worst quarterback performance in an Orange Bowl since Drew Aller last year. But Texas Tech's defense deserved a hell of a lot better, man. That defense is legit. I don't know how many of those guys they're going to keep. Probably none. I honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know how many of them are NFL eligible. I think all. I think they're all kind of mercenary hired guns, so they might have to reload next year. But Texas Tech just signed Brennan Sorsby in the portal, and I feel very confident in saying that if Brennan Sorsby was starting for Cincinnati, or he was Cincinnati starting quarterback, now he's moved on to Texas Tech. If he was starting for Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl, I think Texas Tech wins that game against Oregon. I honestly do. That's how bad Baron Morton was. I mean, he was unbelievably bad. But Oregon does the job. They make a few plays offensively, just enough, right? Dante Moore was okay in that game. But he looked a little flustered. That Texas Tech defense kind of got under his skin a little bit. And I think Indiana's defense, right, I'll rewatch that game this week, and we'll kind of point out the issues that Dante Moore was having against the Hoosiers earlier this year. But he was pressured, and he was very flustered, and he made mistakes in that game, and that's why the Hoosiers went into Eugene and won. So I don't think it's going to be easy for him in this matchup. And that's why I like Indiana. The New Year's Eve game, congrats to Miami, the big upset of the college football playoff so far, upsetting Ohio State as a touchdown plus underdog. Ohio State didn't look great. I think Julian Sayin was a little bit outmatched. I think Carson Beck had a little more poise in some of the bigger moments. To be fair, Sayin made some throws, but the Miami defense was just suffocating. Ohio State couldn't run it. Defense made the one big pick six and then held on. I think Miami deserved to win that game. Ohio State didn't lose it. I thought Miami made the plays to win it, and Ohio State just didn't play their best game. They just kind of got squeezed a little bit by a really good Miami defense. So now Miami moves on. They'll play Ole Miss, who upset Georgia in a wild game. Game of the weekend. Went way over the total. Obviously, Ole Miss covered. They were an underdog in the game by about 5. I think it closed 5.5. Trinidad Chambliss and Kawan Lacey were the best players on the field. Georgia just looked like they didn't have the polish that a typical Georgia team does. They definitely were tough. They battled back, right? They took the lead, then fell behind, then battled back, and I thought they were going to win that game. But when you give up a 40-yard completion on I think it was third down, that gave Ole Miss a chance to win the game in regulation, and they kicked a field goal, and then the safety made it a 5-point margin. But you just got to tip your cap to Trinidad Chambliss. I mean, he was unbelievable. He reminds me of Kyler Murray running around out there making all these crazy plays. So now Ole Miss moves on to play Miami. I think Miami's defense, especially their defensive line, is a little bit fiercer than Georgia's, although Georgia's got dudes, man. I just don't think they're as polished, NFL prospects just yet. They're a younger group on defense, and they don't have that elite pass rusher off the edge. They're a little more of a unit, whereas Miami's got those two bookend defensive rush ends, Mesidor and Bain. And I think if they can keep Chambliss contained, I think that's where Miami has the edge. But not easy to do. Easier said than done. Georgia's got some pretty good athletes and some pretty good players, and Trinidad Chambliss was making them dance around and dance through the raindrops. So I think Ole Miss is very live in that game. Now, they're dealing with a ton of issues off the field. Their coaching staff continues to get decimated and vultured by Lane Kiffin. And I don't know exactly how many coaches are splitting their duties right now, but there's many of them that had to go to LSU and start coaching for Lane. So Lane Kiffin continues to leave his stamp on the Ole Miss team long after his departure. And I don't know how big of an impact that will be with their prep. Relatively short turnaround, right? They play Thursday. They'll play again on Thursday, so they get 1 week. And in that time, all those LSU coaches are flying back and forth to deal with other duties. So I lean Miami in the game, probably priced right at 3.5. Do I fully trust Mario Cristobal? No. Still don't. I think Chambliss is obviously more athletic and elusive than Carson Beck, but Carson Beck has a lot of experience, and he seems to be clicking with this offense. And the defense for Miami might be the best defensive line outside of Texas Tech in the sport. So that'll be a really fun game. I think Ole Miss is live. I think I like Indiana more than I like the other game. I think Indiana's winning the national championship. They're the best team in college football this year. Kurt Cignetti, this turnaround is incredible. And they just got Josh Hoover in the portal, TCU quarterback. So if you think it's going to be a one and done, think again, because Indiana's going to be right back in this spot next year. They're going to be the favorite probably heading into the Big Ten next year, tied with Ohio State. I mean, maybe Ohio State will be slightly ahead based on respect, but Indiana's going to be right there, especially if they win the national championship with Josh Hoover and with the recruiting class that looks pretty damn good and a ton of money in the NIL parts. I think the days of Ohio State and Michigan being the top dog in the Big Ten are numbered. I think Indiana is legit. Also, I love what Penn State's done. Haven't talked about Penn State a lot over the last couple of weeks. Matt Campbell comes in. Basically, Ames East is coming to Happy Valley. You get the quarterback back. You get a bunch of players, tight end, receivers, running backs, all transferring to Happy Valley. Penn State's got the number one transfer portal class right now. Obviously, a lot could change over the next few weeks. But just a rush, a tidal wave of Cyclones coming east to Happy Valley. And I think Penn State is going to be a damn good football team next year. I love Matt Campbell. I think Becht is a solid college quarterback. I think he's a top 10 transfer portal quarterback. Sorsby's definitely the crown of the class. I think Levitt's the other guy that people are coveting. Lagway's another guy. Hoover. But I'd say Becht is probably a notch below all of them. A notch below, but he's right. He's in the vicinity. And I think the culture that Matt Campbell's building, the schedule they have next year, they don't play Ohio State. They don't play Oregon. Their toughest road games are at Michigan and at Washington. Their non-conference schedules like Buffalo, Temple, and Ohio. They're probably going to be 10-2 next year. And they're probably going to be sniffing the playoffs. So Penn State, Indiana. I don't think Michigan is all the rage. I mean, you know what they're dealing with. I know Whittingham's a good coach, but that's a lot of upheaval that Michigan's dealing with right now. Ohio State, they've got Sayin and Smith coming back, but they kind of faltered down the stretch. Indiana and Miami handled them. So I don't think that Ohio State team's got the same swagger that we're used to either. I think the Big Ten runs through Bloomington, And I think that second spot in the Big Ten, especially with Penn State not having to play Ohio State next year, I think that number 2 spot in the Big Ten is wide open. I don't know who's going to be the number 2 guy next year. I'm hoping it's my Nittany Lions. I love what they did in the portal, and I'll be very excited to watch how that develops. If I had to make a prediction for Sam Levitt, by the way, who is now the next great quarterback available, I would guess LSU. LSU's got to bring a quarterback in. Maybe it's Trinidad Chambliss. Maybe after this Ole Miss run ends, maybe Chambliss goes and follows his old coach Lane to Baton Rouge. But Sam Levitt's going to land somewhere, and he's a damn good quarterback. So we'll see where Levitt lands. But Sorsby to Texas Tech, love that. Texas Tech, if they bring some of that defense back, if their defense is half as good as it was last year or this year, with Sorsby, they're going to be fantastic. And Josh Hoover to Indiana. And Rocco back to Penn State. I mean, those are 3 impactful quarterbacks all finding new homes with the transfer portal up and running. All right, let's close out the show with our usual segments. Rise and Wine. Let's talk about my New York Football Jets. Oy vey. They cannot bring Aaron Glenn back next year. They cannot do it. I know that he's a first-year coach. I know you usually give those guys the benefit of the doubt. You usually want to bring them back and give them another year. But I said it on October 15th. I was looking back at some old footage from prior shows today, and I said Aaron Glenn is the worst coach in the NFL. He is not that guy. And I was right, because the way that the Jets have played down the stretch, and I know their quarterback situation is dire, but listen, Riley Leonard just put out 30 points for the Colts today against the Texans defense. Brady Cook doesn't have a ton of weapons around him, but the game plan, the professionalism, the execution, it's complete shit. And the defense, that's the part that I don't understand. Aaron Glenn is supposed to be a defensive coach. He was the defensive coordinator with Detroit, former cornerback. How can you hire a defensive coach and your team then becomes the first team in NFL history to record 0 interceptions the entire season? I'll repeat that again in case you missed it. The Jets this year, the first team in NFL history to go the entire season without recording an interception. Unfathomable. Ludicrous, considering their head coach is a former defensive back. The Jets trailed by double digits on 53% of their offensive snaps this season, the highest percentage by any team this century. Everything about their season was a disaster. And the one thing Aaron Glenn was supposed to be good at, coaching defense, the Jets were historically bad. You can't bring him back. You cannot allow him to groom the next quarterback. The Jets have the second pick in the draft. They will likely be drafting a quarterback, if not second, at some point. And then in 2027, when they have 3 first-round picks, they have 2 next year. They have 3 in 2027. I just don't think you can have a defensive-minded coach as your guy. You need to bring in an offensive-minded coach who can groom that quarterback. I'm sorry, Aaron Glenn. We gave you a year. It was a disaster. It was worse than expected. The Jets finished with 3 wins. Their win total was 6. And they had 0 interceptions. Unacceptable for a head coach who was a former defensive back. I can't put it any more plainly than that. All right, Morning Glory. We finished with an actionable segment. I'll give you 2. I'll give you a bet for the FCS championship game, and then I will give you a bonus Morning Glory, a futures wager in the college football playoff. First, FCS championship, Montana State, a 10.5 point favorite. Actually, let's call it 10. I see a 10 out there in the market right now. Montana State, 10-point favorite against Illinois State, total 56.5. My bet, Montana State minus 10 and the over 56.5. I make the game 14-61. Have I watched either of these teams all year? Of course not. It's the FCS. Unfortunately, I've not watched any FCS football this year. But I trust the source of the numbers, and this is the only game on Monday night. So we're going to put a couple of small wagers on the favorite and the over in the FCS championship game. Montana State over 56.5. Enjoy your championship Monday in the football championship subdivision. College football playoff bonus, Morning Glory. Indiana, plus 135 to win the whole shebang. I did the math on the Moneyline rollover. We're going to say Indiana minus 190 favorite in the first game, right? What's a Moneyline rollover? You bet the Moneyline in game one. You win. You take everything back, right? Let's say you bet $100 to win X. You take your 100 plus your winnings. You roll it all back over on the money line in the second game. Typically, this is called a mechanical parlay. Typically, that rollover is a better payout than just betting the future, unless you get an upset. For example, the way that the projected spreads are for the championship game, if Indiana plays Ole Miss, there'll be about a minus 300 money line favor, about 7.5 point spread. Where if they play Miami, they'll be about minus 200. If Indiana ends up playing Miami, the better bet to make is the rollover, right? Indiana money line, then you roll it over and you bet Indiana money line again in the championship against Miami. If it's Ole Miss, then the futures bet plus 135 will be the better payout. To be fair, even if they play Miami, it's not a huge difference. It's only like 10 cents off about that. My math might be a little bit fudgy because, again, it depends on what money line price you get. I was kind of going on the conservative side. But, yes, if they play Miami, the money line rollover will be the better option. But I don't know if they're going to play Miami. I think there's a chance Ole Miss could win that game. So for the purposes of this show, for the purposes of ease, make one bet and you're done, even though you might lose a few pennies on the dollar with the money line rollover. And by the way, if you want to do the money line rollover, by all means, have a blast. I might be doing it as well. But I want to give you guys one bet for the show, and that's our bet. Indiana, plus 135 to win the college football playoff. I think it is Curt Cignetti's year. Revenge of the Nerds. He's a special man. Really talented coach. How wild is it that the four coaches left in the college football playoff, right? Pete Golding, Mario Cristobal, Curt Cignetti, and Dan Lanning. They're all Nick Saban disciples, all four of them. The apple does not fall too far from the tree. Thank you for listening here. Episode 15 of The Morning After. Don't forget, we are going live Tuesday and Wednesday morning, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time with college football playoff preview shows. I will be previewing the Peach Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl on Tuesday and Wednesday morning. We will be watching film, talking about the matchups. If you want to hop into the live chat and ask me questions, I will answer them. It is meant to be fun. It is meant to be casual. And we will hopefully find some edges for the game that we can maybe bet on. Subscribe to the newsletter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click all the buttons. Continue to support the content. It will all be free. Everything on the newsletter side, everything on the YouTube channel will always be free. If you want to join the Discord, I do have a bets package available for $20 a month where you can buy all the bets that I make. It's basically my break-even price to just keep me invested in churning bets out on that Discord every single day, every single week, especially after football season ends. But also you could just join the Discord for free and chat in the sport channels and get all the content that I post in the free channels. There is one premium channel in my Discord that costs $20 a month, and it's where I post every single one of my wagers as I'm making them, including how many units and what sportsbook I bet at, and maybe sometimes some write-ups depending on what the bets are. But you can also just join the regular Discord for free and chat with, it's about the 500 to 600 members in there. We're chatting about games depending on who's playing and stuff like that. There's a channel for every sport. It's fun. Join it. Check it out. It's free. But you can also upgrade to the premium Discord if you want all of my wagers as I'm making them in real time. All of that information you can find a link to all of those things: newsletters, social channels, YouTube channels, Discord. It's all in the description, so check it out. Appreciate you tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this little sprint through the NFL season. It's been a really fun but very volatile NFL season. I'm excited that it's over. I'm excited I can start to focus on more individual games and really dig into the matchups with only 6 games this week, and then 4, and then 2, and then 1. And in the college realm, we only have 3 games left, 2 this week and then 1 for the championship. So I can really start to hone in on each game, and it allows me to hopefully put out some better content and some better opinions, and keep this train rolling along. And then we'll sprint right through football season and get right to March Madness coming up real soon. I love y'all. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way out, and I'll talk to you next time.